Hello everyone! How are you doing? Sorry for the slight delay. It wasn't tech issues, unless of course my voice sounds terrible now, but it wasn't tech issues. I had a surprise visit from my nephew, who isn't quite 1.5 yet, and he was showing me off his new walking skills. So it was too cute to be like, you have to go now. um, so yeah, that's why we're a few minutes late, but I think that's okay. Sorry for holding you up. I hope you're having a good time in the chat. Um, but yeah, uh, how's everyone doing? How is chat doing? How's Twitch doing? I often talk to chat in general, but we've got Twitch chat here, and we've got YouTube chat here. Um, so if you, I guess some people prefer watching on one or the other. I'd be interested to know why you prefer one or the other. I usually watch stuff on YouTube, and I think that's just because I'm old and not a gamer, so I don't have much like interaction with the Twitch world other than streaming there. So sorry if I'm like a poser, a non-Twitch pro. Hot, yes, it is quite warm, isn't it? I'm enjoying the weather. I've got a nice new summer dress on. Um, I like hot weather. It's actually very hot in my YouTube room or my Twitch room. um, yeah, who have we got in chat? Arden. Hello, Arden. How are you? I saw everyone. You should check it out. You might think that Arden just does the line and um like producing and arguing and stuff. But I noticed sneakily that she put out a YouTube video recently on her channel. Maybe there's a couple. But you should all definitely go check it out because Arden's like not that horrible as a person. So she gets my 1 out of 2 seal of approval. Um, yeah, I miss you too, mate. I know that. So the problem with Transatlantic is me and Arden started Transatlantic together, and I thought it was really good, and we were doing really well. And we specifically picked Thursdays because it was what I could do. I pressured for Thursdays, and I pressured for the time slot. And then I had a burnout and couldn't do any YouTube stuff for a while. And now I'm back. I can't do Thursdays. So that is like the sole reason. That and trying to stay sane and not trying to say yes to every single YouTube offering. But I would love to do more transatlantic with Arden. Or without Arden, whatever. No, with Arden. But it's just gonna have to not be a Thursday, or it's gonna have to be on a Thursday that my other plans don't go ahead. Um, yeah, Arden does have suspicious views on mayonnaise. That is true. Um, yeah, that's the real reason that I don't go on the line anymore because more than just suspicious. Thursday is the Pokemon night. Yeah, I know that's really cringe, but I've really tried to prioritize my keeping my mental health sane. In my latest reincarnation on YouTube. You might have noticed I've put a video out pretty much every single day for like months now. And it's actually quite a lot of work. I know I do like this long stream now, but obviously I prepare for it in advance and I edit the videos and I do the thumbnails. It's not loads of work, but it's enough work that it's like an extra day of work. And I already have like a normal 9 to 5. And before, like last year, I was also saying yes to interviews and also like doing the line and also doing all this other stuff, and it kind of melted my brain. So I am focusing on like having a social life too. But yeah, anyway, I would love to go back on the Transatlantic show. I sometimes feel like I just need to argue with someone who's an idiot who's called in. I just like it's a hole in my life. Where I don't get to do that. I don't miss having a job, but I do miss a paycheck. Yeah, I mean, well, you do get money from YouTube. I don't get a significant amount of money from YouTube, but I actually just rather miss the arguing. Because as you probably know, if you've never seen this live stream before, you don't know who I am, that's fine. But if you do, you probably know that I like arguing, that I'm a bit of a dickhead. So, um, you can probably understand why I why I miss it. I didn't really want to describe it like I had no social life, but the problem was before is that I had my social and like friends and family, and my job, and all of the like activism stuff I did, plus YouTube, and like sometimes sleeping, sometimes doing other things, but rarely, and it was just like overcrammed. I've tried to condense a few things and uncram it a bit. It's still pretty jammed. I'm quite busy. Anyway, you don't care about my social life. What you were thinking about? Actually, one thing I did want to say, I just thought I'd say it. I mean, I guess it's relevant to this. Is that obviously the last couple of weeks in the UK we've been dealing with the fallout of this horrific Supreme Court ruling, and we're going to be dealing with the fallout of that for years. And we're going to be talking about that on the show. But like one of the things that I talked about last time was this kind of feeling of fear and defiance, and how they're both there and they both kind of oscillate. And I'm still having that. I had a bit more of a fear day today, but I'm still feeling defiant. But for the first weekend after the ruling, I did my best to just be like around my family and like, you know, feeling safe by being around them. But last weekend was like a bit more removed, had a bit more time. I processed my thoughts like with a therapist, with my family, with my friends, on this show. Last weekend I just did like just saw some friends, just did some stuff, and I kind of just totally forgot about it. I didn't go on Blue Sky or Twitter or anything. Didn't read the news. And it just made it even more insane and surreal coming back to it on Monday or Sunday evening or whenever I was looking at it. Because, like, I did go to a Pokemon cards tournament. I'm sure you're sick of hearing about it. I came second. I swear I could have won this one. My brain just ran out of energy and I just started doing stupid stuff and throwing it away. But, yeah, and I'm just, like, interacting with these people, like, some of my friends, and a load of people I've never met before in a town that I've never been to before, like men and women. Presumably no one else there was trans, though, you know, who knows for sure. But it's just all so normal. Like none of them know anything about it. No one knows or cares what's happened. They might have read a headline in the news, but they don't know what that means. And in one sense, it can be kind of like isolating when like everyone else is carrying on as normal and you're like whole world has fallen apart. But in another sense it's really like grounding, because like it's just so ridiculous. What they're trying to do is just so like detached from reality. It's so insane. Like the idea of like trying to ban me from going to the toilet at like a Pokemon cards tournament. It's just deranged. And it's just not something that everyday people care about or want to enforce or anything. Obviously, some organizations are going to try and enforce it, and they'll try and put signs in, and you'll get these like insane freak toilet vigilantes and stuff. But it's just not something that affects anyone, like most people. So it's just, yeah, it just made it seem even more ridiculous. Like, just it's so like what's the word, like I don't know, it's like not a very real thing. It's like this force off in this faraway land has declared that you're subhuman or something, which is pretty much what's happened. Some people in Scotland or London, a combination of, has decided that I'm not fully human anymore, but everyone around me is treating me like a person, like a woman, like they were up until now. And yeah, I mean that does give me some more strength. It's sure to be reminded that most people aren't as rabidly angry as the vocal minority are. Yeah, I mean, I have encountered gender critical people in real life a couple of times. Like I've been out, like I transitioned over 10 years ago now, which is insane. That's crazy to think that. It still doesn't, it seems like forever. It feels like I was never not transitioned, but at the same time it seems like quite recent. That's weird. But I had some gender critical people interrupt one of my talks. I had a man throw a drink over me. I had some men threaten me and a friend on a bus. Um, but that's it. They're like all the gender critical people who have had the guts to say or do, or even like like I've not even had people frown at me. I've not even had like someone act weird. Like early on in transition, when I first came out, sometimes you get people, they wouldn't really know where to look, or they would kind of stare and then suddenly stop staring when they realized they were staring. But fortunately, I've got to a position where that doesn't even happen anymore. And it just hasn't happened in years. And so when I had, like, I can't remember how many years ago it was now, some man presumably recognized me, or maybe clocked me, who knows? Or maybe someone said something, who one of my friends might have been clumsily said something, I don't know. But no, probably not. I'm not blaming them. But anyway, for some reason, he came over and was like, "Are you trans?" And then started saying a load of like transphobic, very clearly gender critical things, like a load of gender critical buzzwords, and he ended up throwing a drink in my face for no reason, like unprovoked. Like that was so grim at the time. Like just cried, you know. It's just like the feeling that someone hates you so much that they feel like they need to confront you. Just wait. Like I was just outside having a drink with my friends. I was on a hen do with just like, there was like 12 cis women there that I was with who are like my best friends. And it's like, you know, one of the times in which there's the most like sister energy, and this man who, some fucking obsessed freak who is surprised that he had even gone outside, came over and like felt the need to try and ruin my night. That was kind of one of the most upsetting things. I didn't at the time feel like unsafe, like I have before, when me and my friend were on a bus and a bunch of like thuggy type, gender critical type guys got on, and that I did actually fear for my like physical safety or even my life. But in this case, I didn't, because it was like at a metal bar with loads of people I knew and loads of like normal people. And when he did that, like instantly it like, you know, sort of kicked off and stuff, and everyone was there to defend me. I just felt like really depressed at the state of the world, and that there were people this like horrible and wanting to ruin other people's lives and stuff. That was the main thing. But other than that, like, I just don't encounter them. Because they're not normal people. They're not the kind of people who go out. They're not the kind of people who have hobbies and clubs, and like it's like with this. Oh no, we're not going to cover this now, because we're going to cover it later. We're going to talk about gay bars and lesbian bars. We're going to come onto it later. Right, we're going to get onto our first thing, because otherwise I'm going to do this thing where I talk for ages and then we haven't covered any of the topics, and I want to cover some of the topics. We're going to cover something which is probably going to get me fired up. So, actually, I should just work out who these people are. Okay. So, you might have seen this clip from Sky News in which Dawn Butler, who is a Labour politician, and Simon Clarke, who is a Tory politician, have a discussion about trans women, because, you know, this is what the British media is now. It is just room after room, day after day of discussion talking about trans people with no trans people there, like a room full of cis people. So here we have these two and a like the host of the show, whatever, and lots of people have been sharing this because Simon Clarke here is a fucking idiot. His reaction to what happens is just like so revealing of the whole anti-trans movement, of the gender critical mindset of this like right-wing man who has absolutely no idea what he's talking about, but just hears the word trans and is disgusted. Like, such a fucking idiot, and such a good example of this type of ridiculous clown of a man. Dawn Butler here is arguing to some extent, in favour of trans people's rights. She is part of the Labour Party, or the party in power at the moment, and they are actually probably overall, as a party with Keir Starmer in charge, worse for LGBT rights than the previous Conservative government. But Dawn Butler herself seems to be, a good person and generally pro-LGBT. But Dawn Butler has been a politician for 10 years, and that's about how long the turf wars have been going on. And what she says here is just dismal. Like, the worst, it's just the worst, most infuriating conversation you've ever heard between two idiot cis people who clearly have neither of them have ever talked to a trans person, have put in absolutely no effort to learn about this topic at all. Like, it is just, terrible. This guy gets 0 stars because he's a fucking idiot. Dawn tried, but she gets a I tried my best sticker, 1 star out of 10 for the effort put in here. Like, it's just really bad. Anyway, let's watch the clip. I'm gonna have to pause it. I'm not gonna be able to let this play the whole way through without pausing it, because it is just so infuriating. It makes me want to scream. But yeah, right, let's see how far we can get through this clip without me screaming.
If trans men then have to use women's toilets, that's going to make women less safe, because how are you going to stop a normal man going into a woman's toilet?
Okay, so first point, she's saying if we force people to use the toilets of their birth sex, then trans men will presumably either have to or be allowed to, in some form, use the women's toilets. As we covered last week, and as I have a video coming out soon on this channel, that argument doesn't actually hold up, because the gender criticals have also banned trans men from men's spaces and women's spaces, and they ban trans women from women's spaces and men's spaces. They don't care, they just want to segregate us from society. But, did you catch it? Let's go back a little bit.
Going to stop a normal man going in.
A normal man. It's just so infuriating. Like, there is a word for men who aren't trans, or people, or women, or just anyone, and that's cis. And it's not a new word. It's not a word that we invented this year. It's not like, oh, the language of social justice changes every 5 minutes. Like, this word is coming up 80 years old in this context, and the actual word is 2,400 years old because it's a Latin word. But also now you're saying that trans people aren't normal, and this is the kind of thing I would totally I've heard people say this at the pub. Like, when I first came out, maybe even some of my friends said something like this. Totally excusable from someone who, maybe you're watching this video and you're like, oh, I don't know what's wrong with this. Like, I support trans people, but I'm new to this. Like, I'm not coming for you. You're here to learn, and that's amazing. The reason why I wouldn't say normal as the opposite of trans is because a lot of people who aren't trans, cis people, aren't normal in any sense. Graham Linehan is not a normal person, and a lot of trans people are normal. I mean, maybe you don't think I'm normal because I like thrash metal and Pokemon cards or whatever, but a lot of trans people are normal in whatever. There's no, we can have this big argument about whether normal is a good word for society or not, because it's creating people as outcasts or something, but in any reasonable description of anything, there's no way you could construct a definition of normal that it just means the same thing as not trans. It completely ridiculous. Terrible usage here. And if she doesn't want to say the word cis because she's bought into all this bullshit fear-mongering about using the words that trans people use, she could even say non-trans. That would also do. But anyway, sorry, I've cut in way too early. Let's keep going. It gets a lot worse.
How are you going to stop a normal man going into a woman's toilets and saying, I'm a trans man? And so I think we have to look at that's
confused.
Why?
Because the point is that we're saying that people who are biologically men shouldn't be using women's toilets. That's the point of this ruling, among other things.
But a trans man is biologically a woman.
So frustrating. Like, this guy obviously has no fucking idea what a trans man is. He's never Never even thought about it. In his stupid little pea brain, he's never thought, well, if a trans woman is someone who used to be a boy and is now a woman, do they go the other way? Are there people who are born girls and who are now men? Like, he hasn't stopped to think about that for 1 second. He's arrogant enough to come on TV to talk about where trans people should be able to, like, exist in society, but he hasn't bothered reading the notes from the Conservative Party, like, propaganda brochure or whatever that they hand out to politicians. He's not even read the Sex Matters, like, hateful bullshit thing they hand to all politicians. He's put no effort into this at all. He's not thought about it for 1 second. And then Dawn Butler has the chance. Wow, this would be such a good dunk. This fucking idiot is saying that, like, trans people have to use the facilities of their birth sex. And this is your opportunity. You actually have a guy who's never encountered the concept of trans men before. And you can be like, well, where are they supposed to go? And then he'll be like, crashed computer, which is what he does. Sorry, I'm spoiling it. But then she has to come out with trans men. And then she's like, he doesn't know what I'm saying. Oh, I mean women who are pretending to be men. Like, just come on. Like, put some effort in. Just talk to a trans person. Read something. They're not biologically women because they medically, in a lot of cases, most cases, medically transition and change their biology. And they're not biologically the same as either of the two women in this situation. Biological woman is an attempt to, it's a slur for trans men, and it's an attempt to obfuscate and hide the reality of what is going on, which is why this guy is so confused, which is a man who could easily look just like him, who used to be a girl at one point, who is now being told that they have to use the women's spaces. And it's just so infuriating that she just put no effort into understanding. Like, it's not even that she said normal, which is frustrating. It's rude. It's offensive. It's dumb, but it's not like terrible. When I saw that and she said normal, like kind of under her breath, I cringed. I was like, okay, that was dumb. Maybe she just slipped up and forgot the word. Pretty bad. But when you're starting to say slurs for trans people in their defense, what are you doing? Like, have you seriously not even talked to anyone involved in this at all to understand what we're talking about? Like, one of the core propaganda arguments from the anti-trans side is saying this: trans women are biologically men, which is scientifically, factually false. So why are you just repeating it? Like, why are you're just taking the core anti-trans argument and saying, yeah, I agree with that, but I don't think it's very nice, but it causes some complications, which it does and it isn't. But yeah, it's just so garbage. Anyway, let's keep going.
Biologically a woman.
Someone who's transitioned from being a woman to a man is...
The host is way better. She's put some effort in. Like, that's just so easy. It's just so easy to say that.
And so they would then have to use women's toilets.
I think this...
What the fuck is wrong with him? Like, look how long he's just, like, zoning out for. His brain. There's nothing going on behind those eyes at all. He just completely zones out and is just, like, sitting there in silence.
And so they would then have to use women's toilets.
Okay, where are we now? 39. 54. Takes 15 seconds. It's just like... It's just, like, news to him that trans men are a thing. He didn't even have... Like, there are gender-critical responses to this. There's, like, some very dumb, low-level gender-critical apologetics. The classic one is be like... He could just say, well, they're biologically female, and so I believe that women should be able to make their own spaces and make their own associations. Or like, just some kind of dismissive science denial rubbish. That's the baseline gender-critical apologetic. The next level up, which is like the Mayor Forstater one, is to be like, well, the trans men who have transitioned are scary for cis women, and they should be banned from the men's toilets too, and the women's toilets too. Which is actually her position. It's actually the position of the Equality and Human Rights Commission and J.K. Rowling and that. He didn't know that one. He hadn't even thought of that one. Like, the arrogance you have to go on to talk about people's human rights and to not have even heard of over half of the people that you're talking about. Just incredible. Like, I am most frustrated at this dickhead Simon Clarke because it's just crazy that there are people who exist like that who want to take away rights from groups of people they don't even know exist. Like how arrogant you have to be. But also I'm so frustrated at Dawn Butler's like rubbish performance there. Like absolutely terrible. Really is like 1 star out of 10 on how well she did there. Like D-, failed the exam. It's not just that I'm not. It's not just that I'm offended. It is offensive when they say something like, "Oh no, I meant a normal woman." Like that is offensive. But who cares about offensive? Transphobes are offensive to us. Orders of magnitudes worse than that every single second of every single day. You just cannot exist as a trans person if offense is something that like damages your well-being. It will destroy you because, yeah, offense isn't even something I consider. It is offensive, but that's just, who cares? It's like factually wrong when she says normal because it's just completely nonsense description. But when she comes out with this biological woman thing to try and explain what a trans man is, it's just feeding the anti-trans position. Like she's just completely undermining the argument that she's trying to have. Because like it's like this classic, oh, but sex and gender are different argument. Like, yeah, sex and gender are different. But if you paid any attention, you would see that the transphobes are saying, but I don't care about gender, I only care about sex, and sex cannot change. And then what's your response to that? Well, if you're like Dawn Butler and you've paid absolutely no attention in 10 years, then you'll just be like, oh, well, well. Or you could be like, well, actually, sex does change, but also, like, what chromosome someone has doesn't actually affect who finds them attractive, what medicine they need, or what discrimination they face, which is exactly why we shouldn't be segregating people in terms of medicine, sexuality, or prejudice based around their birth sex or one particular sex characteristic that they may or may not have that you can't even see. It's just such a easy position for her to have. Like it's not complicated to realize that denying science and claiming that transition doesn't do anything and that people should, I mean, she is arguing that trans people should have rights regardless of their biology, but to also just accept the transphobic framing is just so counterproductive and scientifically wrong. So rubbish. Terrible clip. Made me want to scream the whole way through. The best person in the whole thing was the host, who maybe she said some other stuff that's terrible. Maybe she's amazing. I have absolutely no idea. But in this one clip, she said one thing, and it was to correct Dawn Butler absolutely fucking up the description of a trans man. Like she said, someone who's transitioned from a woman to a man. That's not always true. A lot of trans men were never women because they transitioned before they were 18. Or whatever the definition of the woman is in whichever country they live in. Because it is a social description and not a medical description when you become an adult. Anyway, that's a good enough description for most people in the audience. Yeah, terrible. I also saw a bunch of like left-wing people sharing this clip like, Dawn Butler destroys Simon Clarke, stupid conservative, doesn't know what's going on. And like, no, this clip should be captured. I don't know what I'm going to title the video, but it'd be something like, 2 fucking idiots have a conversation about trans people. Like, so bad. I feel like Dawn Butler should issue an apology for this. It's so rubbish. And like, maybe she's watching this clip And in which case, Dawn, I'm sure you're a very nice person, and I do appreciate that you were trying to stand up for trans people's rights in some capacity. But I am frustrated as to why you don't seem to have talked to a single trans person in the last 10 years. I just don't understand why that's the case, considering as we are like in the top 3 culture war issues. So, what should we talk about next? Let's talk about this. I wanted to talk about this topic last week. Let's just make sure I've clicked all the things. Okay. So, a or a quite influential gender critical activist called Nicola Murray has been, according to Edinburgh Live, carrying out a shocking campaign of abuse against 4 children. Nicola Murray sexually assaulted 2 victims by forcing her tongue into their mouths and freely talked about her sex life to another child, including describing the size of her lover's penis. This news site, Edinburgh Live, describes her as a high-profile domestic abuse activist, which she may or may not be. But importantly, she is a high-profile gender-critical activist or anti-trans activist, and they don't mention that in this entire article. But that's like her main thing. Like what happens with a lot of these people? They might have some background vaguely related to something like this, and then once they get trans derangement syndrome, that like consumes their lives, and that's who they become. This person is a gender critical activist and not just a total nobody. So let's just jump ahead a little bit. So since this news came out, she has locked down her account on Twitter. That vegan lass is her thing, and has a quote, says she's Christian here. But it wasn't locked when the article first came out, and a trans journalist here, Too Damn Trans, went on the profile, and I did actually personally see this myself, and I didn't screenshot it, but fortunately Sasha did. But this lady, Nicola Murray, was, or is still to this day, or at least to the point that this article came out and she locked her account down, was followed by like all of the major gender criticals. So here we have Sonia Soda from The Observer. There's a whole bunch of them here. Malcolm Clark from LGBT Alliance, Millie Hill from Gender Critical in General. I don't know what they all do. Karen Ingala Smith, Rosie Duffield, For Women Scotland, the group at the centre of this recent ruling, Jean Hatchett, Joe Barstosh, like all of the big names in the gender critical movement followed this person. And sure, I'm sure it's happened in the past that you have followed someone and then it's turned out that they're a garbage person. And you're like, oh, and you might not find out straight away. You might be like, oh, wow, I didn't hear that news. I'm going to unfollow them. But this isn't just like some celebrity that you're disconnected from that you find out is a bit of a prick or something. This is like the gender critical movement is quite close knit, and all of these people are of similar size profile, and there's no way they haven't heard about this. They're all in group chats. They all know about it. She was posting about it on her own account as well, like denying it all. The news has come out. There have been people confronting the gender criticals on this. They don't care. If this had been a trans person who had done this, if a trans person had been doing these disgusting things to children, it would already be international news. But because it's not just a cis person, but it's a gender critical activist, they don't care. They don't care at all. So let's read about more what the disgusting things that she's done. Nicola Murray sexually assaulted 2 victims by forcing her tongue in their mouths. She forced one child to view an explicit sexual image she'd taken of a man. It's just so grim. Murray's campaign of terror also included blaming one child for causing her to suffer a miscarriage and restricting the breathing of another by smothering their face with a pillow. What the fuck? Further disturbing incidents saw Murray drag a young child out of a top bunk bed onto the floor and branded another child a tranny after they styled their hair to look like their favourite pop star Pink, who is a cis woman, by the way. like, it does not surprise me at all that a gender critical activist would use tranny as a like derogatory slur for even non-trans people, because to them trans people are like subhuman filth, and it's one of the most disgusting things you could do would be to be a trans person. So it's like the best insult that they use when they're trying to abuse people. But get this, all of the abuse took place at the addresses in West Lothian and Perthshire over a 20-year period. 20 years. This gender critical activist, high profile gender critical activist, fucking freak, has been abusing people and children. She was arrested and charged after one victim bravely came forward to report her in 2022. Yes. Oh man, she set up a group for after suffering a miscarriage, and enables so she introduced a petition to create an offence that enables courts to hand down longer sentences for violent domestic abusers who cause their victims to lose their baby. That is a good thing. I mean, I could say I commend her for doing that, but I don't really want to commend someone who's been arrested for sexually abusing or abusing children. But this, like, it's a good thing. But for her to become like politically activated after suffering such a horrific thing against her, to then go and blame a child for suffering a miscarriage, and to like do all these horrible abusive things to other people, like, how, I just don't ever understand how anyone can be a victim of abuse and then want to do that to other people. It's just horrific. I hope someone else who is not gender critical and is not an apologist for this kind of behavior takes on this cause of fighting for longer sentences for domestic abusers. All domestic abusers really need longer sentences and need more action from the authorities, but particularly those who cause miscarriages. But yeah, I do think that this isn't just a random nobody. I know that she only has 10,000 followers, which doesn't seem that much. But in the gender critical world, they're very interconnected, and 10,000 followers is a big sized like Twitter account for the gender critical movement. Although you might think like these people have people in positions like in parliament and judges, and they're making decisions across the whole country, they're still not that big a movement. They're a well-connected, very well-funded movement, but there isn't that many of them. So this isn't just a nobody. This isn't like this isn't what constantly happens with like the other way round, is some random person who just happens to be trans happens to be a criminal. It gets reported on by the news internationally, blown up straight away. And then the gender criticals will spin it as like trans rights activists are all bad because this one is bad. It's like, this person isn't even an activist, and also like the first I've ever heard of them is this, and if they were an activist, I would be disgusted at this action and have absolutely no reason to follow them on Twitter or support them in any way. So this isn't a both sides thing. This isn't just like two sides throwing similar accusations at each other and some of them are criminals because just people are criminals. This is a gender critical activist, a high profile one, who is calling children's trannies as an insult, like clearly motivated by her belief system, as part of a pattern of abuse for 20 years, who is still interconnected in the gender critical movement. Yeah, says she has systematically, physically, emotionally, and sexually abused these children over 20 years. The victims have been repeatedly struck, slapped, and dragged. One child gave evidence they had been treated like a dog. Yeah, so I don't know if we've got sentencing yet. Let's see. Don't know, but her pinned post was professing her innocence. But it does look like here that she has been convicted. She was found guilty on 3 charges of assault, 2 of sexual assault, 2 of indecent communication, 1 of indecent assault, and 2 offences of behaving in a threatening or abusive manner. But that's just between August and December in 1 year. That obviously when stuff like this happens, they can't get evidence for every single one of the crimes. But when you find someone guilty of that many things, and the victims of them say that actually there was like hundreds more, you know that there was hundreds more. Or at least I personally believe when victims say that. I couldn't possibly say whether she would be found guilty or not at trial, but it is good that she was found guilty of the ones she was found guilty of. Oh. Sorry, I forgot to do a warning for that last post. That last section. So sorry to anyone who was caught off guard by that. I do try and at least warn people what's coming up. How's chat doing? Sorry, apparently my voice is running out already. That's pretty terrible, isn't it? 1 second. Sorry, everyone. Right, let's move on to the next thing. Let's do something positive. So, as you know, recently we've had this horrible Supreme Court ruling in the UK, and the summary is the Scottish government tried to make it so that they have quotas for men and women on public boards. So they wanted more women involved in politics, basically, which, whether you agree with quotas or not, is at least admirable that they want to increase women in politics. They said it included trans women. Then a hate group sued them. The hate group lost it in court. Then they appealed it, and they lost the appeal. And then it went to the Supreme Court, and then they won. And it was a total flip of what all the lower courts have said. The ruling is a complete mess. It's a complete disaster. It's against science, etc. Anyway, one of the core points in all of this is the Scottish government took it all the way to the Supreme Court too, obviously defending their position. And then as soon as they lost, they were like, oh, well, we're done. So they are partially responsible for removing trans people's rights in the whole of the UK. And part of how our legal system works is the only people who can appeal this Supreme Court ruling are the defendants, the Scottish government. And they could do, because unlike in the USA, the UK Supreme Court is not our highest court. It's our highest UK court, but there is one court that we are below, which is the European Court of Human Rights, or the European Court of Justice. So there's one level above. And looking at previous trans rights cases that have made it to the European Court of Human Rights, we probably would have won there. There was multiple rulings in the last couple of years, including one just this year, which very strongly came down in the side of trans people and trans people's rights. And it's very likely that they would have ruled in our favour based on the right to privacy and the right to data protection, because those things are very wrapped up in all human rights, and particularly in all of this trans rights stuff, because in order to police lots of the stuff that transphobes want to police, you have to violate people's privacy, and Europe actually has very strong privacy protections. Anyway, because the Scottish government gave up, that's it. It's not going to go to the European Court of Human Rights. There's not going to be a final decision on it. And now, in order for us to repeat that same ruling and take it all the way back, we'd have to start at the lower court again. And it'd be much harder to get anything heard there if it was just repeating the same argument. So we'd need a new argument. And that would probably need to be something like a trans person or a trans woman is denied access to using the toilet at work, and then she would have to take that to court, and then it would have to go all the way up, and it would have to get all the way to the European Court of Human Rights, which is probably, realistically, what will happen. It will just take 5 years. However, one of the many criticisms that we have of the Supreme Court ruling is they explicitly denied any trans people being involved in the case at all. They allowed like multiple gender critical hate groups to be involved in the case. They obviously allowed the Scottish government to be involved in the case because they were the defendants. And they obviously allowed For Women Scotland to be involved because they were the people suing. But they also allowed Sex Matters to be involved, and LGBT Alliance, and a bunch of other transphobic dickheads. But no trans people. They allowed one submission from Amnesty International, who aren't a trans organisation, they're just a general human rights organisation, and they weren't allowed to appear in person, they were just only allowed to write in. So they just dismissed all their arguments and didn't pay any attention to any of it. And that is clearly unjust. It's just crazy that they ruled taking away the rights of a whole group of people without a single member of that group of people being represented in that court at all in any way, other than indirectly through a general human rights organisation that wrote a letter. But there is another route to get this particular case, or this particular argument, overarching argument, to the European Court of Human Rights. So here we have UK's first trans judge appeals to European Court of Human Rights over Supreme Court ruling. Victoria MacLeod brings action against UK for infringement of her human rights after ruling on biological sex. Okay, interesting. That sounds like it's completely opposite to all of what I've just explained to you. Well, there's a slightly different route in. Britain's first trans judge is taking the UK to the European Court of Human Rights over the Supreme Court's ruling. Their crappy summary, The Guardian's never that good. The UK Supreme Court ruled that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act referred only to a biological woman. They didn't put that bit in quotes, but they should have done, because they haven't defined what a biological woman is, and they've implied to have defined it in a way that isn't actually in correlation with biology. Anyway, they should write birth sex here. They ruled that the Equality Act referred only to birth sex, with subsequent guidance from the Equality Watchdog amounting to a blanket ban on trans people using toilets and other services. Pretty much just full stop, but particularly of the gender they identify as. Victoria MacLeod, a retired judge, is appealing to the European Court of Human Rights to bring action against the UK for infringement of her Article 6 rights. So Article 8 is the one about privacy. You don't need to know this. It's a bunch of legal stuff. But what is important is Article 6 of the European Convention on Human Rights guarantees the right to a fair trial in both criminal and civil matters. So she is actually arguing that trans people weren't given a fair trial. This wasn't a fair hearing because no trans people were allowed to be involved in it. Last year, she sought to join in the litigation in the Supreme Court case against the government, arguing that it would significantly affect legal protections for trans women, but she was rejected. So she was a trans person. She is a judge, an expert in this area, someone directly affected, someone who had the funding to be involved, and the Supreme Court said, no, you cannot be involved. And then they didn't, and it's not like they said, because we've already got a bunch of other trans people involved. No, they just denied all trans people from being involved. So now she is arguing that that was unjust, and maybe this is an angle to get it to the Supreme Court. Not the Supreme Court, the European Court of Human Rights. So she says, the basis that the Supreme Court refused to hear me or my evidence to provide them with information about the impact on those trans people affected by the judgment and failed to give any reasons. Those are two basic premises of normal justice. There were protest groups speaking on behalf of women in this court case, on behalf of transphobes in this court case, not on behalf of women. But ordinary women were not actually represented as a whole. The disabled were not represented. And now we're seeing the Conservatives saying that trans people have got to use disabled toilets, which impacts the lives of disabled people. The impacts of all of this have not been dealt with. True. It obviously this ruling was just about trans people. They were the only people that the transphobes care about. They don't care about intersex people. They don't care about disabled people. They don't care about vulnerable women. They don't care about women who are misgendered, cis women who are misgendered. They don't care about any of that. They were just there to hurt trans people. However, those other groups are affected. I'm not saying, oh, you know, the real victims of this are the cis people. Not at all. Obviously, the main victims here are the trans people. But it doesn't really matter who the main victim is, because if this is harming disabled people, then disabled people should have been involved in the case as well. So, yeah, it's like, it's crazy that they just have done no like impact assessment on this at all. Is everyone still there? Is chat still working? It's disappeared off my thing. Oh, it's come up on that. Are we all left? Maybe I'm just talking about a boring thing. Okay, sorry. Right, we'll edit that bit out. So, I've forgotten the name. Victoria McLeod is right to argue that it was unfair that trans people should, weren't represented in this case that affects their rights. But also she's right to point out that it affects lots of cis women and lots of disabled people. And particularly the EHRC's guidance, which is horrific. Over the weekend, the Cabinet Office Minister, Pat McFadden, said it was a legal consequence that trans people would be banned from using the toilets of the gender they identify as. McLeod said that rather than resulting in clarity, the judgment and subsequent government and commission statement have brought chaos. There's chaos because we've got the Supreme Court saying one thing, we've got the government and the AHSC saying another thing, we've got planning rules that the last government set whereby inclusive bathrooms are supposed to be discouraged. Yeah, so I mean, obviously the Supreme Court case is a total mess, but this is one, not the only one, but this is one, like, potential avenue to do something about it at a court higher than the Supreme Court. It's quite possible that this will go nowhere. It's quite possible that she'll lose her case. It's quite possible that she'll win her case, and they'll say, yes, you should have involved trans people, so next time you got to involve trans people. And then nothing about the case will be reversed. But you just don't know. And I think what this is good to see a trans person standing up and fighting for all of us, and to know that, like, maybe to some of you watching, the idea that she could skip ahead and go straight to the Supreme Court, I keep saying Supreme Court, go straight to the European Court of Human Rights with this legal argument based on the Article 6 right to a fair trial. Maybe you knew that. I didn't know that. I didn't even see that as an opening. And now to see her doing this, like, makes it clear there are a lot more legal routes and a lot more routes in general to fight back for trans people's rights than initially appears, like, obvious to you. So it might feel really crushing if you're a trans person who lives in the UK, that they've just, like, stripped away our rights. And especially as you see some organizations start to, like, try and ban us from public spaces. But this isn't the end. Like, as I was saying before last week, this is like the start. This is the start of the pushback now. And Victoria McLeod is one of the people doing that. She's not the only one. She might be one of the more high-profile people doing it. She might be having more access to the Supreme Court and the European Court of Human Rights than we do. But if she fails, that isn't the end of it either. There's inevitably, from this terrible ruling, there is going to be a whole bunch of cases that get to the European Court of Human Rights, and at least some of them are likely to go our way. So don't lose hope. Get hope from this kind of thing. And yeah, just hang in there. Sorry, I had a panic there when when the chat went blank. It's fine. If you got nothing to say, then don't say anything in chat. But I was suddenly like, where's it all gone? And it looked like it had disconnected because my little notification thing was like, click here to start the chat. I was like, oh no, I've just been talking to myself for the last 10 minutes. So let's cover some... what else can we cover? What can we do next? I kind of want to talk about... No, I kind of want to talk about something, some gender critical ideology stuff. I like the abstract ideology stuff as well as covering the news. Let's do some of that. So, sorry, we are going to talk about one of my tweets again, one of my Blue Sky posts, though this is based on something that Typewriter Monkey, or Typewriter Monkey, I don't know how you meant to pronounce this, Typewriter Monkey has said. So, she said, a sex that's immutable, even if you change every single sex characteristic you have, is not actually a biological one. And I basically just rephrased that and stole her point. If you ask gender critical people what you would need to be able to change about your physical body in order to change sex in their eyes, they would never give you an answer. They can't, because to them, biological sex, which is something they say all the time, is a non-material essence like a soul given to you at conception. And when you say that to gender critical people, they scoff. They're like, no, that's exactly what trans people believe. You're just trying to do Darvo. But this is like the inevitable reality of their ideology. This is actually what gender critical is, because they say, right, their two core pillars of their stated beliefs, at least, are that sex is binary and that it's immutable. So that means that there's only two of them, and you're one of them or you're the other one, and you cannot change it. And obviously you would then say something like, well, in nature, there are living organisms that don't just have two sexes, like some fungus. And they'd be like, no, okay, we're just talking about humans. Because also, like, in nature, there's plenty of animals and plants which change sex in their lifetimes. And they'll say, oh no, we're just talking about humans. And that is an admission that sex as a general concept isn't binary or immutable, just that it is in humans. So, like, obviously we know that there are some fish, some lizards or whatever that can change sex, and there are some mushrooms or whatever with more than two sexes. So if that's the case, there must exist, like, when we say, like, a fish has changed from one sex to another, there must be something that you can measure when you know when it's changed from one sex to another. Because, like, what is it that makes it male or female? And, like, typically, if in real science and not in gender critical land, you would say, well, there's a bunch of characteristics that the males and the females have, and it's usually stuff related to and around reproduction, like gonads, genitals, what gametes they can produce, the hormone levels. And as an animal changes from one sex to another naturally, those things will change, and there's not really like a definite cutoff point where it goes from A to B. It just kind of slowly changes over time, and you could say, well, on this day it was a male, and 6 months later at this day it's a female, but we don't know at which point. But what we do know is that some or all of their sex characteristics have changed. And so what we're saying is there's a bunch of things which are required to change in order for it to change from one category, one of our human constructed categories, to another. Sorry, 1 second, Poppy, you're being annoying. Sorry. And that means that, like, obviously when animals in nature change sex, they follow a typical pattern that whatever that an individual of that species would do in order to change sex, but they don't all necessarily do it successfully. They don't all necessarily change all of their sex characteristics. Sometimes In some animals, they might begin a transition because they are it's like something that happens in a lot of fish is they'll have loads of males, and then the biggest, strongest male will transition into the female. But if they start doing that and then a bigger, stronger male turns up, sometimes they have a conflict or something, and then that one will transition. And this one will either stop where it was or like transition back. Sometimes that's not an option. Sometimes it's transition part of the way. And it would be very hard to categorize either one in transition or one that had started to transition but hadn't, which of these boxes it would go in. And like a scientist would say, oh yeah, well, it's not really in either of those boxes because those boxes aren't a strict binary. But a gender critical person couldn't say that because they are arguing that sex is binary. But anyway, they at least should accept, or probably most of them accept, that these animals are changing sex characteristics and are changing sex. But they say humans can't do it. And you're like, okay, so what's the difference? What is it that animals do that we can't do? Like, what is the thing preventing it? And they, like, the first thing they'll say is, like, you can't change chromosomes. Like, okay, so are you saying that in order to be in the male category, you have to have XY chromosomes, for example, and in order to be in the female category, you have to have XX chromosomes, for example? That itself doesn't create a binary because there's loads of different combinations, but maybe you could actually create a binary by saying if you have a Y chromosome, you're male, and if you don't, then you're female. That is a true enough binary. And obviously we can't change whether you have a Y chromosome or not. So there we go. That's it. That's defined it. Sex is binary and immutable. Apart from, there are cis women who have given birth who have a Y chromosome. There are men who have fathered children who don't. There are people who have a mix of some of their body has Y chromosomes and some of it doesn't. Sometimes it's like most of their body has Y chromosomes and some of it doesn't. And sometimes it's like just a bit of it does. So are you telling me that there are people out there who are mothers and might not even know that they are actually male? Like, what use is that categorization system if it doesn't even like pertain to reproductive capacity or ability? It doesn't pertain to how society treats them. It doesn't like describe their sexuality or how they view themselves or any social category or any biological category at all. Literally all you're doing is you're pattern matching one single aspect of what people have in general and then saying it's a strict rule when obviously isn't. And then they'd be like, oh, okay, no, we're not talking about that then. It's gametes. When you transition, well, it will just totally drop chromosomes and pretend we never said that, though next time we have this argument, we will start with that again because we're completely dishonest losers. But instead, we're going to go with gametes instead. And we're going to say, well, yeah, you're not male unless you produce sperm, and you're not female unless you produce ova. And then obviously we say, well, again, there are some people who don't produce either, and there are actually very rarely some people who produce both. And in fact, recently I was finding out about there are, like, gonads means testicles or ovaries, but there's actually something called an ovotesty, which is some way in between the two. And sometimes ovotestes can produce one type of gamete, and then if given hormones can then switch to producing the other one. So that's not binary or immutable either. And they just you can keep pressuring them on this and they'll come up with something else like gamete potential or what you should have done or something like this, some unmeasurable rubbish. But the reality is, if you're claiming that there are these categories that exist and you can't change from one to another, there must be like a material, measurable reason. Sometimes the argument they'll come back with is like, well, you couldn't change into a car and I couldn't tell you what's the definition of that or something, or you couldn't be a donkey. What stops you from being a donkey? It's like, well, I don't actually know. I'm not the one who is claiming that strict categories even exist. But I can totally concede that the difference between like me and a donkey is, or me and a car, is a lot further away than between men and women in general. And I wouldn't say something like, well, in order to be a car, I need to have 4 wheels, because then obviously you can just show a picture of a three-wheeled car or a car with 6 wheels or something. And I could say, well, oh, you need to have an engine, and then you could just show me a car without an engine. But the point is, here is, I'm not the one saying there's a strict definition of a car, a strict definition of a donkey, and a strict definition of a human. That's like analogous to the gender critical argument. But there are certainly things that we could measure where you could say this isn't a human. If it does have wheels and drives at 70 miles an hour, like that is a material thing you can actually measure that is like stops it being a human. You know, that is out of the realms of possibility of a person. Because there's some like measurable physical differences in this case. So what is it for sex? Like what is the thing? If I have a person, like just right, okay, I have a person. What is it that I need to measure? I have any scientific tool imaginable, like not even necessarily real ones. I could have sci-fi ones. I can measure anything about this person. What is it that I need to measure to see which sex they are? And it should give me 100% of the time. It should give me one undeniable, unambiguous answer that cannot, and it has to be something that you can measure that you can't change. Because obviously you can't measure like which gonads someone has and say that defines which sex they have, which sex they are, because that is something you can change. You can have your gonads removed and then you don't have gonads anymore. And then what are we measuring? So, and the reality is they don't have an answer. There isn't anything. There's nothing in the gender critical worldview. There isn't a physical characteristic that, like, in reality, sex is a whole bunch of characteristics. It's things like genitals, gonads, hormone levels, like some secondary sex characteristics, and chromosomes, and a whole bunch of stuff. And basically all of them, apart from chromosomes, you can change. And that's why they always start with chromosomes, because it's the one obvious thing that you can't change. But as we've already covered, that isn't a definition of sex. It doesn't define sex as a binary, and it doesn't define sex in a way that makes any sense at all. So this is why we will say the gender criticals believe sex is a magical, mystical soul, because like if they could say, oh no, you cannot be a woman because you do have this, or you cannot be a woman because you don't have this. If that was something they could say, then, you know, at least theoretically they would have a worldview which was consistent. But they'll either say you cannot be a woman because you have a Y chromosome, and then you're like, well, here's a cis woman with a Y chromosome. Or they'll say you cannot be a woman because of gonads, and then you'll be like, well, there are some people without gonads. Or they'll just keep dodging around, and they can just never give you any concrete answer because there just isn't one. Does remind me of this cartoon, which I actually did years ago. So here is a trans person stepping out of a sci-fi machine, and the doctor says, okay, the transformation is complete. We've changed every single one of your sex characteristics. So this is a sci-fi machine. It's changed the hormones, their genitals, and their chromosomes. And the gender critical person says, still a man. And that's because this is obviously, it's a nonsense sci-fi representation. But what is wrong about this? How does this not describe the gender critical ideology? Like, the gender critical people aren't turning up and saying, oh yeah, if you could, like this animal, change your chromosomes, then I would accept that you've changed sex, but because you haven't, then you won't have. Because they know if they pick a sex characteristic, or they pick anything and say, this is why you can't change sex, then you'll just come up with a counterexample. So yeah, gender critical is completely nonsense ideology. Like, if you try and probe, if you just keep pushing and you keep asking questions, you'll feel this like resistance from them where they'll have an answer and they'll have an answer and then suddenly they won't have an answer and they will deflect off. It's like trying to push two magnets of the same polarity together. Like it's going together and suddenly it's like, woo! Like they just will not answer. And I think some of them obviously have no idea what they're talking about and they're idiots and they're just repeating what they've heard. And when they get to the end of their script and they don't have an answer, they just call you a paedophile or something. But lots of them do know. And they know it's coming. And when you start asking them for an answer, they don't have the intellectual honesty to go all that way. They know something's wrong with their ideology and they're not going to say out loud because then they'll get dunked on. And you can see it coming. Like, if you say to them, okay, what is it that we need to change in order to change sex? What is the thing? Just tell me. If you can be like, oh, here's the thing that you can't change, and there's no counterexamples of cis people who have already have the other thing, then I'll be like, oh, okay, that's your definition of sex. We can argue whether that's a good one or not, but at least you have one that is binary and it is immutable. Just tell me it. And they can't because there isn't one. I hope that wasn't too ranty. I feel like I should have planned that out better, what I was saying. I don't know. Good enough. Whatever. GCs know if they give any testable, falsifiable definition, they are fucked. Absolutely. That's a better way of putting it. Because there's never going to be one. They literally, they cannot construct a binary immutable definition of sex. They cannot do it. It's not like they've not had the time. It's not like they don't have the resources or I was going to say like they don't have the brains. They kind of have the brains. Like there are some smartish people on the gender critical side. Like they have like doctors of stuff. They've talked to each other. They've discussed it in chat. I've talked with them in chats before. I mean, I talked to Dr. Emma Hilton in DMs for ages trying to get her to answer this question. And they can't give you the answer because there isn't one and they know it. Like lots of them know it. Just embarrassing. I'm so glad that I don't believe in an ideology. I just can't answer like that. Because they'll often say, oh, yeah, well, gender identity is exactly the same. Gender identity is some unmeasurable characteristic about a person. Yeah, it is unmeasurable. Just like sexuality is. Like, sexuality is unmeasurable because I'm not trying to claim it's a material part of your body. It's part of your brain. And it's something that develops in your brain over time. And we can't measure it directly. Maybe in the future we would be able to measure it. Maybe there is theoretically a structure in your brain which takes a certain shape if you're gay or a certain shape if you're straight or whatever. Maybe. I'm not saying there is. It'd probably be terrible if we did discover that because they would instantly try and eugenics us. But the claim isn't that there's some measurable thing that determines whether you're trans or not, determines whether you're gay or not. It's just a function of your brain. And all we can ever do at best is recognize that there is enough examples of this in society that we know that this must be a real thing. It's not just one person claiming something. It's like centuries across the entire world worth of evidence showing people that consistently exhibit the same behaviors. And so it must be some real phenomenon of humans. Same with handedness. Like, theoretically, if you were born left-handed, you could learn to write with your right hand and even fake being bad at writing with your left hand. And then what can we measure? There's nothing we can measure to determine what handedness you are. All we can do is ask you. That's the same with sexuality. It's the same with gender identity. But when it comes to sex isn't like your brain does have some kind of sexual dimorphism, which doesn't mean it's binary because it isn't. It's quite weakly sexually dimorphic, but with sex, when people are claiming that there's binary sex characteristics, they're saying it's a material part of your body. So what is it? What do we measure? Why can no one answer this question? I'm going to stop ranting about this now. Let's move on. We are going to talk about... let's talk about some more good news. So... let's start with this one. So I'm just going to look up something here. 1 second. Yep. Okay. The BMA, the British Medical Association, which is a professional body for doctors in the UK, had a conference on Saturday, and they voted on an emergency motion to show their opposition to the Supreme Court ruling on the definition of woman. And this is quite strongly worded. This is like doctors being professional, okay? And this, they don't really hold back. So they voted on this. This meeting condemns not even expresses concerns or worry. They condemn the Supreme Court ruling defining the term woman with respect to the Equality Act as being based on biological sex, which they refer to as a person who was at birth of the female sex as reductive, trans and intersex exclusionary, and biologically nonsensical. We recognise as doctors that sex and gender are complex and multifaceted aspects of the human condition, and attempting to impose a rigid binary has no basis in science or medicine, while being actively harmful to trans and gender diverse people. As such, this meeting reiterates the BMA's position on affirming the rights of trans people and non-binary individuals to live their lives with dignity, having their identities respected. Reminds the Supreme Court of the existence of intersex people and reaffirms their right to exist in the gender identity that matches their sense of self, regardless of whether this matches any identity assigned to them at birth. Condemns scientifically illiterate rulings, scientifically illiterate rulings from the Supreme Court made without consulting relevant experts and stakeholders that will cause real-world harm to the trans, non-binary and intersex communities in this country, and commits to strive for a better access to necessary health services for trans, non-binary and gender diverse people. This is pretty strongly worded. This is pretty amazing. This is like the Union for Doctors voting to say the Supreme Court is biologically nonsensical and scientifically illiterate. Like, these are strong words. I'm so glad that there are like experts in these fields that are covered are saying this stuff. Like, it's such a relief. Like, obviously I've been shouting about how sex isn't binary or immutable for years. And I think a lot of trans people have. Certainly some before me. I'm not trying to claim that I'm the originator or anything like that. But I do think a lot of doctors and scientists haven't really been shouting about it. And that kind of makes sense. Like, it just happens that quite a few of my friends are biologists, like lecturers and postdocs and stuff. And like, I talked to some of them and they were like, because I said, like, would you consider signing a letter saying you oppose the Supreme Court ruling about biology? Do you agree with this? Like, do you agree with this description which says it's not binary? And they were all like, yeah, it's obvious. Like, everyone knows that. That's like the basic thing you do in undergraduate. Like, why does anyone even need to say this? Was kind of their reaction. And I think that's how a lot of scientists have seen this. Like, they, not all scientists want to be involved in politics. They don't pay attention to it. If they don't have a trans friend, they probably don't know about it at all. Like, my friends only know really through me. And why would they pay attention to these ridiculous gender critical arguments? You see some of the newspapers saying sex is binary. It's like when you see some of the newspapers saying that a marriage is between a man and a woman. You're like, oh, this person's a fucking idiot. I'm not going to pay attention to them. And I don't think they all realise how much political power these people have and how bad it's getting. And obviously the Trump stuff has woken them up, but also the Supreme Court ruling has woken them up a bit. And so I'm not, like, if you're a scientist or a biologist or whatever and you've not spoken up until now, I mean, kind of wish you had, but I'm not coming for you. Like, I'm not angry. I'm just so relieved that you're now paying attention. Or maybe you're paying attention before, but now you're feeling compelled to say something about it, because they are at the highest court in the UK ruling that, like, science is wrong. And that's, like, fundamentally an even bigger issue than trans rights. Because if we have courts ruling against, like, science or maths, then anything's possible. And that's, like, what we're seeing in the USA at the moment. Like, just absolute craziness. As, like, it's like that thing where a court in the USA tried to rule that the number pi was the same as 3. Like, if they can do that, they can do anything. Like, there's no connection. Suddenly the law is disconnected from reality, and that's bad for everyone. So I do think it's important that organizations, specifically of experts in the field, I think it's very good that doctors are saying it. I think it'd be very good if biologists would say it. I think it'd be very good if feminist organizations would say it. But there are a whole bunch, like, there were so many organizations who have given a range of statements on this. There's so many like, different organizations that give statements. I couldn't go through them all, but there's a bunch that I've seen that have stood out to me. I might have not even caught all of the best ones, but for example, here's another one. This is a union, so Public and Commercial Services Union, PCS. So they've reacted to the ruling. And they've said, PCS is carefully assessing the Supreme Court's recent judgment within the framework of the Equality Act, etc., etc. However, they do say the current interim guidance published by the EHRC is clearly not fit for purpose and is damaging in its advice and will be impossible to implement. Again, these are not, like, they're not being mild with their wording here. This is pretty full on. PCS is committed to a thorough response to the announced consultation and campaign that any guidance issued puts support and dignity for all at its heart. As an equalities-focused union, PCS remains steadfast in promoting and championing the workplace rights of women, trans, and LGBT workers, and will continue to advocate against discrimination and harassment in the workplace and wider society. So, yeah, and they do say they acknowledge that some members, particularly trans and non-binary, will be facing worry and uncertainty following the judgment and the implications which may unfold. The union stands ready to provide support to all members to live their lives free from harassment, discrimination, and reaffirms that intimidation, intolerance will never be accepted at PCS. So this is just a union, sure, but it's one of the biggest unions in the country. And also I've heard, might need verifying, that this is the union that most of the EHRC workers are with. So, I mean, as we covered a couple of years ago when it happened, like, when they put Baroness Falconer in charge of the EHRC, there was accusations that she was bullying staff, loads of people quit, there was all these leaks about, like, horrible treatment in the workplace, and, like, people crying in meetings, and like, it sounds like she's just an absolute tyrant. But if, as well, like, all the people who are still working there are in a union and voting, like, pushing the union to say that the EHRC guidance is not fit for purpose, damaging, and impossible to implement, like, that's pretty damning. Moving on to other things, I'm sure there's a whole bunch of groups of like, feminists saying "not in our name." Like, I think that's actually quite a good slogan. But so here there's a letter which you can sign if you're a feminist academic. We call on all trans inclusive feminist academics and educators to sign this statement. So here they basically say the same thing, like, we unequivocally reject the idea that women can be defined by their biology, a claim which is neither feminist nor scientific. For centuries, women have fought for the right to do, wear, and be what they want to be. It is essentialist and patriarchal to assert that body, genes, chromosomes, and reproductive capacity make a woman or man. Great. This is exactly the kind of pushback we want to see. It is terrifying when like authoritarians, like the gender criticals, have the power, like when they are actually in authority. But it's like obviously it's very bad, but we have like the people, we have the biologists, the doctors, the feminists, who are the ones that the gender criticals are claiming to be speaking for, the LGBT rights organizations, the unions. Like, that is in a sense more important. I mean, the truth is more important. I personally care about that a lot more than any of these other things. So the fact that like actual reality is on the side of trans people is one thing. That's pretty good. But having the unions and stuff is really important, and I'm glad to see doctors, unions, feminists, and also here we've got a call from an LGBT network for all LGBT networks to stand for trans people. So and there's like other unions here, and also Good Law Project. There's a bunch of like legal things. You can donate to this if you would like. They are going to challenge the Supreme Court's ruling. This is pretty strong wording from a legal group as well. We believe that the Supreme Court, which disgracefully refused to hear from trans people before handing down a decision with the profoundest possible consequences for their lives, has placed or revealed that the UK is in breach of its obligations under the Human Rights Act. So, like, it's good to see from legal professionals too. It's like the whole spectrum of stakeholders. I don't really like that word, but the people who are involved in this are all speaking out. And if that's you, I know it can be scary. Like, I've been talking to someone who's been trying to get a letter of various academics involved in biology to like write a letter basically. And they were saying that quite a lot of people were reading the letter and not disagreeing with it, but not signing their name. And I mean, we can't know for sure unless someone, the individual tells you. But some people are scared of publicly signing their name in support of trans rights because of the horrific amount of abuse that some people get for standing up to the gender critical movement. I understand that it's scary, but I just think we have to do it. And the more people do it, the more spread out the abuse will be, the more momentum we'll have, the more power we'll have together. And look at all this, we've got the BMA, like big unions, feminist organizations, like people are standing up and doing stuff. So now is your time too. And if you are an expert in biology, if you're an expert in feminism, if you're an expert in the law, like, please say something. Like, this gives me so much strength to see, and I do think it matters. Like, if you're a politician and you're like, oh, look, the politicians are saying one thing, the media is saying one thing, this gender critical hate group is saying one thing, but like all of the scientists and doctors and feminists and LGBT people and lawyers are all saying something else. Do I really want to be a science denier? Do I really want to be anti-feminist? I mean, some of them, yeah. But lots of the conservatives don't give a shit. Oh, apparently Keir Starmer and Wes Streeting don't care. But anyway, this one I quickly skimmed over here. From Trans Safety Network. They've written a letter to Pride events asking for them to stand for trans people and to not include politicians who are being anti-trans. And this is a letter that you can read, up in the description, and you can sign. They have organizations. These are like, there's lots of LGBT rights organizations here. There's a lot of organizations. There's a lot here. And then there's individuals. I am on here. But like, you can sign this if you want. There is a lot of people. Like, the women's, whatever it's called, WDI, used to be called WHRC. They have been trying to amass organizations and create all these gender critical hate groups to all stand for something. And they like they've been going for years and years, and they have like this many. So yeah, it's good to see people standing up to this, and I just think if you have any kind of authority or professional standing or expertise, you need to say something, because everyone else is starting to say something, and the more people say something, the less they will be able to justify oppressing us. Like, this is the time. So thank you to everyone who has. Let's close those ones. Oh, why do I keep clicking that one? I've never clicked that one before, and now I've been clicking it. My town has a trans rights protest going on in May, but I am nervous to attend. I understand. I don't know if you're a trans person or a cis person, but either way, I understand being nervous to attend a protest if you haven't before. I was nervous for the first couple of times I went to a protest. One thing that I will say, like, protests, like, sometimes you see them on the news and it's like, you know, this protest turned into a riot and the police were firing water cannons and kettling people, and terrifying. I've never been in a protest like that, and I'd be very scared too. But most protests aren't like that. Most protests are a bunch of people turning up, shouting some stuff, and then going home. And that might sound dismissive. It probably does sound dismissive, but I'm not intending to dismiss it. I think they're really powerful. I think probably the thing that protests do best is energizing people, making you feel part of a community. It's scary to go to a protest, and then when you go and there's like thousands of people there, and you look around and you're like, you know, lots of people here aren't trans people. Lots of people here, you know, there'll be someone holding a sign saying like, my daughter's trans and I support her rights or something, and you're like, there are so many normal people here, and there's so much energy, and you might hear from speakers, and there'll be trans people there who are stronger than I could ever imagine, telling what it was like 20 years ago or 50 years ago. And, you know, young trans people who are going through school at the moment and dealing with all this bullshit and still fucking smashing it at school and still being strong, confident people. Like, it can just give you so much, like, warmth and energy and like community vibes. And I often feel like I go to a protest a bit nervous, a bit miserable, a bit angry, and then I come away feeling like energized and like supported. That's not going to be all protests, but I would say the trans rights protests and LGBT rights protests and feminist protests I've been to have generally left me feeling quite positive, and I think you can get a lot out of them. And also, not just for you, but like, if you go along and you feel energized, that's good. But it's also good that you go along and other people see you there and they feel energized. Like, you're helping other people by being there. If a protest goes from, you know, if there's only 10 people and another person turns up, you have made it 10% bigger. But like, it's like the classic thing of, if no one votes, then, you know, everyone thinks, oh, well, what does my vote matter? It's only one vote. But like, if everyone thinks that, then no one will vote. It's the same with protests. Like, oh, what will it matter if I go to a protest? Like, if everyone thinks that, no one will go. The whole point is everyone needs to go. And by you going, you're like encouraging others to go. You're helping the trans people who are too nervous to go feel supported. Yeah, I think it is worth going to one. And you know, you don't, if you're like still in the closet, you don't have to go and introduce yourself as trans. Or if you're stealth, you also don't have to go. You don't even have to go to the protest and be like, I'm part of this protest. You could just go to the general area and have a look and see what it's like. And you'll be like, oh, it's just a bunch of people standing around shouting, holding signs. Like, you don't have to bring a sign. You could just go and walk over to that general area and just kind of, you know, maybe talk to someone. That's cool. No, you know, everyone there is on your side. Everyone there is there for trans people. So, yeah, I think it can make you feel motivated. What should we talk about next? Oh, let's deal with this bullshit from Kemi Badenoch. Kemi Badenoch, the woman on the right here, is the leader of the Conservative Party at the moment. This headline, Kemi Badenoch suggests trans people should use disabled toilets after Supreme Court ruling. Let's listen to what she has to say. I bet you can't wait. I can't wait. I'm sure it's going to be very articulate, intelligent, and compassionate. Oh,
about talking about the...
We mustn't
You're
forget
very
who
good
this
about
is
talking
for.
about the issues, but not talking specifically about what you would do. Would you say trans people now need their own facilities?
Most, if not all organisations have a way of dealing with this. Not having gender-neutral loos is one of the easiest things that you can do. Almost all businesses I see have disabled loos. They are unisex, different from gender-neutral. Trans people can use those. But if you are providing a single-sex space, it has to be a single-sex space. And the Supreme Court has said, as I always had, that sex is biological. It is biological.
Okay.
Yeah, it's biological, but it's not binary or immutable, you fucking idiot. But, wait, what did she say here?
Neutral loos is one of the... have a way of dealing with this. Not having gender-neutral loos is one of the easiest things that you can do.
Not having them? What are you talking about? That doesn't answer the question. She's just been like, well, where can trans people go? And she's like, well, the first thing you can do is get rid of gender-neutral toilets. You fucking idiot. And then she's like, oh, unisex and gender-neutral are different. That's just pure propaganda. But yeah, she's saying... I actually heard from some disabled activists that the phrase disabled toilets isn't great. I didn't know that. That is what lots of the news says, but they were saying that they prefer accessible toilets. That's totally cool. But I said in response to this that I don't think, well, I'm not going to use the accessible toilets because I don't need to. Like, there's no, I don't want to take up that space. Like, one of my close friends is disabled and needs to use those toilets, and I've taken her in them quite a few times, and it is so frustrating when, like, it happens quite a lot, particularly like music festivals and things, where it's a bit more chaotic and you're like queuing for the accessible toilet with like some other people in like wheelchairs or with, you know, who need the facilities, and then like a couple comes out looking guilty holding hands, or like two people walk out and they're like, oh, sorry, we didn't know there was a queue, oh, I'm really sorry for holding you out, oh. And it's like, why did you fucking go in there? We, like, you know, there's only one of these accessible toilets around sometimes, or maybe there's only one. Sometimes, you know, some music festivals are great and they have lots, but some of them just have like one, and you have to walk across the whole fucking place to get to this toilet, and then you have to queue because some selfish bellend couldn't be bothered to walk just round the corner to one of the trillion toilets for like, you know, for like just the women's toilets is just a little bit further, and they're like, oh, I'm just going to go in the accessible toilet instead because I can't be bothered to wait. It's like, yeah, but the people who can only use these facilities are very inconvenienced by that. And I'm not saying, you know, not all disabilities are visible, and I'm not saying I judge every single person who walks out the toilet like, you didn't need to use this. I'm not like one of those pricks. I don't know, but sometimes it's very clear because they will tell you. Sometimes they'll apologize for using it, like, oh, I didn't realize that there was someone waiting here, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have used this. Like, well, don't do it again. It's fucking annoying. But I also saw people saying that, because I said, well, I'm not going to use these toilets because I don't need them. I'm going to use the women's. But they were pointing out, like, I guess this, what I wasn't trying to imply that no trans people need it. Obviously, some trans people are disabled, but also, like, accessible toilets are there for people who need to use a third facility. And there are some situations where maybe a trans person is only safe to use an accessible toilet. And I do think that I can't speak on behalf of disabled people, but I'm sure some of them will understand the difficulties of the situation, and they're probably more aware than most about, like, the politics and the struggles around having access to toilets. But in general, I'm not gonna use up, like, it's so frustrating for me when, like, a disabled friend needs the toilet and there's not one, or there's one that's being used, or it's been like vandalized, or like some dickhead has got in there and spilt their beer everywhere or something. It's so frustrating to me, and it's not even me who like needs the toilet in that moment. But I would never use up that space. And I understand that there's this kind of feeling that no, like, oh, I'm not disabled enough to use the space, so I shouldn't use it for other people. I'm not really talking to that. I'm like speaking as someone who has no need for that at all in any way and couldn't even argue to. But I just think another point about this, which is just so ridiculous, is like trans women and men apparently are both too dangerous and scary to go into the women's toilets. Because they're a danger to women. Apart from if those are disabled women who use the accessible toilets, suddenly it doesn't matter. Like, oh yeah, you can't go into the women's toilets, you can't go into the men's toilets because the men and the women, they'll be so uncomfortable about you being there. They'll be so scared. They'll be in such extra danger that a trans person is there. Being with the disabled people, fuck them. Like, who cares? Like, oh yeah, more dangerous, making people uncomfortable. Disabled people don't care about that. Like, what are you talking about? It's just so clear that to them, trans people and disabled people occupy the same category, just like subhuman, broken. Like, we just push them off to one side. We don't really want to have to think about them. We just put this one big box for them all to just wee in all together. Like, yeah, it's just so inconsistent. I mean, everything about the gender critical worldview is inconsistent, but this idea that disabled people suddenly don't care about this kind of stuff, it's just so dumb. It's just such a bigoted and stupid thing, and especially for her to be like, sex is defined by biology. It's biology. It's biology. Yeah, and you're wrong about the biology, you stupid dickhead. I think probably the best thing about Kemi Badenoch is she is disliked even by her own party and is very unlikely she'll ever be in charge of the country. Of course, like Kemi Badenoch is like a generic anti-feminist conservative. She hates trans people, but she hates feminists and gay people and immigrants. Like, she fucking hates immigrants. Of course. Kemi Badenoch is the only UK political leader offering unequivocal solidarity to women, says J.K. Rowling. What a surprise! Just, like, could there be any more clear example? Like, still the media and the news is pretending that, like, J.K. Rowling and the gender criticals, oh, they're just feminist with concerns. And here they are cheering on Donald Trump, cheering on Kemi Badenoch. They're literally just conservatives. They may have once been feminists or had some kind of left-wing view or whatever, but clearly they have got trans derangement syndrome. It has melted their brain. The black mold has got into her brain, and she's been posting far-right propaganda for years now. All of them, all the gender criticals, and now that is it. Their single issue, the single issue they care about, they are taking the most far-right stance on it possible, and then who are the people saying the things they like in Parliament? It's the people who are on the far right. And Kemi Badenoch is pretty far right. So, yeah, gender critical radicalizes people right and encourages them to be dismissive of disabled people as in their quest to hate trans people. And like, they hate disabled people separately. It's not like, oh, they like disabled people, but they haven't thought of this one thing. Like, these people are demonic when it comes to disabled people's rights, but it's just a further thing on top of that. That's just, yeah, shows they don't give a fuck. So no, I will not be using the accessible toilets unless I'm with one of my friends or a stranger who has asked me for help. Get fucked, Kemi. Did Katie cover Izzard supporting JK? I really didn't get that. Yeah, that was pretty disappointing. I don't know if God, I've forgotten. I'm not going to say the wrong thing here. Hang on. Susie Izzard. Sorry, I forgot her name. Um, so for anyone who doesn't know, Susie Izzard was a pretty funny, successful comedian in the UK in the 80s. I know this sounds like the setup for a gender critical, but she's not. She transitioned and suddenly became like one of the highest profile trans people in the UK. Which could have been good, but I understand like the difficulty of being like coming out and suddenly being a representative of this group that like she's obviously had lots of has never been like a cis person, has never been like obviously in the cis het domain. Like that was part of the whole like stand up thing and her whole like personality the whole time. But suddenly became like in the eyes of society in a new minority group and suddenly was representing that group, and it's a very difficult position to be put in, and she probably hadn't talked to loads of people about it, loads of trans people, and just kind of was like, oh no, JK Rowling's not transphobic, she just misunderstood. Or I am hoping that that was just a misguided attempt, a naive idiot attempt to try and like not cause or to try and like win her over or something. I'm hoping it was ignorance, and I hope it's I hope she's realized that it's complete nonsense. But I don't think she was ever like supportive of JK Rowling. I don't think she was like Debbie Hayton or whatever. I think it was just like a, oh no, you know, J.K. Rowling is wrong on this one issue, but she has good heart and she's not transphobic. She just has strong views which are misguided. Like, it's just one of those things. But I haven't seen anything about this in years, so maybe there's new. Maybe I should look at. I could look it up, couldn't I? Rather than just talking about something that happened 4 years ago. Let's see. No, I don't think we've got anything new. No. Okay, I think that was just something that came up a few years ago and hasn't been readdressed. So, what's the time? 10 o'clock. We can get one more thing in quickly. Let's see. What else could we talk about? Do I want to? What do we want, chat? Do we want like a rant, or do we want some news? What you feeling? Let's see what everyone says. You got like 1 minute to tell me. Susie is a generally benign person, as far as I know. Yeah, that's probably a good way to describe it. News rant. No, we're not having a news rant. We're having a news or we're having a rant. That's the two options. Maths. I did learn some cool maths recently, though. I won't go into it in too much detail. There's a really good YouTube channel called 3 Brown 1 Blue, and they like describe maths in a way that you can understand. And there's a really cool way of like calculating pi using 2 moving weights in a wall. Check it out if you like maths. Oh, well, if you like maths, you probably already know it. But if you're on the verge of liking maths, maybe this will win you over. It's good. More positive news. Oh no, we ain't got none of that, mate. What are you talking about? I mean, there was one positive news that I didn't cover, but it's not really long enough to be a segment. But like the White House gave in, and they're gonna let trans troops have trans healthcare again now. I think good news. I'm seeing the word rant more than I'm seeing the word news, so we're doing a rant. Sorry, everyone who voted news. So This is a gender critical person replying to J.K. Rowling with just the most like delusional comment that I've just ever seen. Like, how I saw someone describing this as like having a cooked brain. Like, this is a cooked brain response. It's just unbelievable. I just cannot believe that there are people who think like this. I could believe that there were like 8-year-olds that thought like this, but this person looks significantly older than 8. So India Willoughby said something that I wouldn't say myself. And then J.K. Rowling replied to it because J.K. Rowling is obsessed with India Willoughby. I went through because J.K. Rowling recently responded to me, did a video of that recently, and I was going through her media tab to find where she had like put a screenshot of me, and like a quarter of all her posts are about India Willoughby. It's like deranged. Maybe jealousy is a factor. Who knows? Anyway, June replies. June Slater, blue tick. June Slater 17, who has her own YouTube channel. She got her own YouTube channel. Let's see what this is. Goodness. Oh, God, she's got 65,000 subscribers. That is incredibly depressing. Anyway, she says, absolutely delusional. Like, this is the most mental thing I've read in a while. Do these trans women ever do real woman stuff? Tell us, June. What's real woman stuff? Put the washer on. Get the kids to school. Pack lunches. Housework. Cooking. Shopping. Visiting relatives in care homes. Chauffeuring kids around. Or do they just fanny around all day with their appearance? Are you fucking thick? Of course trans people put the washing on and take the kids to school. You stupid fuck. Like, unbelievable. Like, how do you think my clothes get washed? How do you think I eat food? Where do you think my food comes from? Like, if I don't shop for it and I don't cook it, what are you talking about? Like, do you think my cat cooks it for me? Do you think my cat makes my lunch and, like, does the housework? Where do these people, like, you have to dehumanize trans people so much, like, an insane amount, to believe that trans people might not pack lunches or collect their kids from school. Who's getting their kids from school? Like, if trans people aren't picking up their own kids, who's picking their kids up? It's just unreal. It's just so disconnected from reality. I can't even get my head into this space where you consider this group like so subhuman that you can't even imagine them doing like daily tasks. Or do they just fanny around all day with their appearance? Like, brazenly misogynistic. Like, very clearly what every single like misogynistic man says about every single woman. Like, all you care about is your appearance. No, we're doing all the normal stuff like everyone else. And when you like, oh, do you even like shop for your own food? I just, what do you think? Like, oh no, I spent all day combing my hair. I spend all day every day combing my hair and doing my makeup because that's all I care about. And then I starve to death after 4 days. You stupid fuck. My goodness, it's just unbelievable. Someone else pointed out that visiting relatives in care homes, is that woman stuff? I think that's rich person stuff, because not everyone can afford to have their relatives who need care to be in care homes. In fact, kind of internationally across the world, it's very common for relatives who need care to be cared for by the women in their houses, and they're like, you know, elderly relatives who might have medical conditions or dementia or something will need to move in with the family, and then they're often looked after by the woman of the house. And why would that not be true for trans people? In fact, that's more likely to be true for trans people, because trans people are more likely to be poor than cis people. The average trans person's net wealth is lower than the average cis person's net wealth, so we're less likely to be able to afford care homes in the first place, so we're more likely to be caring for those relatives at home. I don't really think that real woman stuff is like visiting, like, who is working in these care homes, June? It's mainly women. It could be trans women. Some of the women in these care homes working are trans women earning minimum wage, looking after your relatives because you're rich enough to afford a care home, and like chauffeuring kids around. Also, when I was a kid, I never got chauffeured around. When I was little, my parents would walk with me to school and we'd walk back together. And then when I got old enough to walk back on my own, I walked back on my own. And if I needed to go somewhere, I had to save up my pocket money in order to afford a bus because my parents couldn't afford to just drive us around, and they didn't have the time because they were doing adult stuff, real adult, real woman stuff and real man stuff, like cooking the dinner and going to work and stuff. Yeah, it's just, this is like such a, I mean, she's got a gender critical thing in a thing, of course. Pronouns, my country's decline. Pronouns are obsessed with pronouns. But it's not like it's a shock when you see someone say something so dumb. Like, the shocking thing here is the dumbness of it. It's not the bigotry of it, because it's really common for you to see any, like, if you see racists, they talk about people of other races like they aren't human. They're like, do these people even wash? Do they even clean? Do they even look after their own children? Yeah, they do. They're the same as you stupid fuck. And you see it with like, oh, misogynists always say like, oh, do women even think? Do they even care about work? Do they even do any of this? Or do they just spend the whole day just making themselves look pretty? Like, you're just a misogynist if you say something like that. You're just a racist if you say something like that about other races. It's just so common. It's like the standard dehumanization pattern, and it's a symptom of a belief system rather than itself like the problem. This isn't just like a normal person who has said something dumb. The only reason that anyone would think anything like this and like bypass their brain in order to say it out loud is if they've already dehumanized the group they're talking about. Because like if you were about to say like, do French people even cook their own food? Your brain might come in and be like, well, hang on a minute, before we say this out loud, how do you reckon French people exist? Like, they need to eat, right? They're still human, right? So someone's cooking their food, and if they aren't cooking their own food, where are they getting it from? And I'm not going to say this out loud. This is stupid, isn't it? This isn't a real thought. This is an idiot thought. I'm glad I didn't say that out loud, because that would be dumb. That's what a normal person would do if they had a stupid thought come up. But if you've already dehumanized the group to the point where you don't think French people are human, then saying that out loud is fine, because it overrides your brain. It stops you thinking. Like it terminates your thoughts. There's this like phrase, thought terminating cliche, where they just say something. Like the classic one is like, oh, women just spend all day there on their appearance. It's just like a thing you say. And you don't need to, it's not there for people to analyze. It's just like to signify to the people around you that you're part of their in-group. And it's to be derogatory. And yeah, you're not meant to think about it. And if someone tries to think about it, then you get defensive. And I'm sure that is exactly what happened. I did reply to this, but of course she didn't reply. Oh, God, this guy. A counsellor. Which counsellor is this guy from? Reform, of course. Okay. Unsurprising. Very good point, June. Very good point. It's not even a point. Do these trans women ever put the washer on? Answer, yes. So it's not a good point, is it? It's a stupid question. It's a very unintelligent, ill-thought-out question. But watch out, because you'll be called sexist next. Yeah, I wonder why. I wonder why. You've spotted it, Stuart, have you? By these say self-proclaimed women that are not actually women, just men pretending to be women. Oh, great explanation there, Stuart. Real big brain stuff. How absolutely ludicrous. Yeah, isn't it ludicrous to think about these people who don't wash their clothes, don't look after their own kids, don't pack their lunches, don't do any housework, don't cook, don't shop, don't visit their relatives, don't drive, and spend all day on their appearance. How ludicrous. But yeah, we'll never know. These people don't think. They say stuff. They're just like, I'm a dickhead. Ha ha ha. Blue tick. I get money for this. End. Very frustrating to see people like this exist in real life and get, well, on Twitter, 4,000 likes is completely meaningless. But it's the average J.K. Rowling fan. For sure. Someone with absolutely no brain who doesn't think trans people are fully human. Oh, what's going on here? Oh, OBS did something weird. Right, everyone. I think we're going to call it there. I do have a bunch of other stuff. Oh, man. Her YouTube channel looks terrible. The NHS preoccupation with Islam. Goodness. Let's look. Just look at this. Oh, man. Intrusive stupidity. Sure, you're an expert on that, mate. And the globalist. Hold on number 10. I wonder what she means by globalist. Man. I hate discovering random people like this and being like, wow, this person has like a fan base and everything. There are a lot of people on the internet, and most of them are fucking stupid. I'm sure me included, but at least there's just there's orders of magnitude of stupidity, and at least I've never said something like, does this group of people cook food? Right, we're being racist to the French in the chat now, are we? Some of my friends are French, actually. Just so you know, I can't be bigoted against French people. French man proposed to me at a music festival once, and I was so drunk I said yes. And we bought a crappy ring from a stall, but it's fine. We're friends. It's all good. I'm not actually married to a French man. Shout out to Max if he ever watches this. I'm sure he doesn't. Sure he won't. But yeah. Good times. I was very drunk. Oh, you've just reminded me. Thank you very much. I got some super chats and I want to read them out. I'm going to try and make this a thing. I'm going to read out super chats at some point. Maybe I'll do it at the end. I saw at the start in the middle of a rant and then I totally forgot. I'm very sorry. I got a super kind donation from Spontaneous Mushroom, who donated 50 British pounds, which is incredible. I am very appreciative of that, and I'm sorry I haven't read this out earlier. Spontaneous Mushroom says, big thank you for all the work you do. You're a light in dark times, and it is very much appreciated. Plus, big love to all my trans sisters and brothers out there. Thank you very much, Spontaneous Mushroom. Big love to you too. We've got a couple more. Just going to cover them quickly. Waywatcher says, you've taught me so much, Katie. What you're doing is important. Sending love and solidarity. Thank you very much. That is very kind. I'm glad that you've learnt something. I think we can all learn stuff, and that's quite important. Jessica says, can you mention the Airbus UK trans ban? I can. Let me just quickly... Okay, great. So the news is out. I was talking to some people involved in this, and the news wasn't officially out yet. So a couple of organisations today announced that they were going to ban trans people from using the toilet at their workplace. One was Airbus and one was Barclays Bank. If you've got an account with Barclays Bank, then and you can cancel it, then I think now's the time. And tell them why. But yeah, also Airbus, kind of terrifying. I think that a few organisations are going to try this, and we just have to sue them, I think. The law doesn't, even with the recent Supreme Court ruling, the law doesn't justify banning trans people from facilities at work. So my advice, my non-legal advice as a non-law person, is to talk to Transactional, Trans Safety Network, maybe Good Law Project, get some legal representation. I've been thinking about what I would do if my work tried it, which I don't think they will, but if they were to, I would tell them that I'm not going to comply and that I will be seeking legal representation and that I'm going to carry on working and doing my job like everyone else, like I have done for the last X years. And if they are going to insist on this, then I'll see them in court, I think is probably what I'll say. We'll see. I just hope it doesn't come to that. I don't think anyone in my office would want that. But you never know with big corporations what they're going to say. What I personally recommend against doing is any kind of protest that isn't explicitly trans related. So if they say you can't use the toilets, carry on using the toilets and say fuck you, basically. Don't say fuck you, but like just carry on using the toilets and ignore them. If they were to then fire you, then you can argue they fired you over trans stuff, and that's a position you can argue in court. If they say you've got to use the toilet and you start screwing around at work or putting up flyers or insulting people, or you refuse to do your work, or you don't turn up, or anything like that, they'll fire you and they'll say you're a bad employee, and that'll be it. So just do your... I know it's horrific. It would be terrifying, and I'd be terrified too. You just have to carry on doing your job and carry on, like, talk to legal people and just carry on. And it's just going to have to iron out in court. And if they fire you for being trans, then you're going to win the court case. So that's just the reality of it. And it's horrible. And we've got 3 from Sean here. Doing some maths. Thank you very much, Sean. Sean says the number of primes less than a positive real number x is approximately 1 over log of x. Yes, I knew that one. Oh, that should be x over log of x. Thanks, Sean. Yeah, I knew that one. I knew that one. Sean says, I've said it before, I'll say it again. There is always a prime number between n and 2n. Poem about Bertrand's postulate. Thanks, Sean. Loads of stuff going on in chat here. Man. Oh yeah, man. There's so much news to cover. I just have to stop now. We'll be here for like another hour. Yes, I did see the stuff about that stupid actor who's gonna work for the Harry Potter thing. Man, people are so fucking self-centered. Anyway, see you all next week. Same time next week, 8 p.m. UK time. Bring your friends. Click on the subscribe button. Enjoy the good weather. Other things. Stay strong. We'll get through this together. It's not over. And yeah, just try and stay as positive as you can. And I'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.